Can I help? Can I help? Can I bounce the light? What's this? What's that? Okay, bye. I don't want to have any more.
So we do indeed have a vintage versus modern one today. We've got the Super Takumar 35mm f2, Canon Fd 35mm f2, the Samyang 35mm 1.5 T-stop, very big difference there. And we've got the 7 Artisans 35mm f9.5 or f0.95, so below 1, so it's pretty bloody open, that lens. We do have to remember that all these lenses are full frame on APS-C sensors, so they're they're not going to be a 35mm. You know, when you have a look through the camera, it's not going to be 35mm. It's going to be more zoomed in or more telephoto in. Except for the 7 Artisans. The 7 Artisans one is actually built for the APS-C sensors, so that's 1 point for the 7 Artisans lens being that, because it's generally a 35mm. All these lenses are quite soft at full aperture, and especially the 7 Artisans, it's a whole lot more because of its aperture is 0.95. For each of the lenses, the sharpest point for all these lenses is quite different. So if you have a look at each lens individually and compare the sharpest point of each lens, they're actually quite different. So which one has the sharpest point? So I'd say it's the 7 Artisans lens has got the best sharpness of it, but it's still pretty soft because it's still more 0.95. The Canon Fd and the Samyang, they're pretty similar, but I think it's the Samyang that's just a little bit sharper. The Super Takumar has the softest at its focal point, but also has the most prominent and distinctive bokeh as well. So the Super Takumar has good bokeh, and it's got the more swirly ones, the swirly bokeh, the really nice ones, the film one. 7 Artisans has the least prominent bokeh at 0.95. Its background looks more like a paintbrush that sort of mixes all the colours and objects together in a blurry image. So it's nice to look at, and it's really good for portraits, but it's not going to give you that swirly bokeh that we're after here. The Canon Fd are fairly similar as well, but I have to give the edge or the swirl to the Canon Fd. So my favourite lens, the lens to rule them all, is the Super Takumar. Made back in 1971, 8 elements, 7 groups, 6 aperture blades. And it's got this orange-yellow coating. Makes it look orange and yellow out of the picture, but the coating is to make it, you know, so all lenses have coating. You know, so to protect itself from the elements. This has been around for 50 years, so it's done a pretty good job. People who made this lens have done a pretty good job of making it robust, last this long. It's my favourite because of the look of it all. The other lenses, they do really nice colour replication. They do well with reducing flares and etc, etc, etc. But this lens is so imperfect that it makes it perfect. The other lenses, they're too perfect. You can't have perfect because it makes it imperfect. This lens is perfect because it is imperfect. You with me? Because it's imperfect, it makes it perfect. I didn't notice any bad or negative focus breathing, which is really good. I was hoping to not see any focus breathing, and I didn't notice any, so that was good. If it is there, do let me know. So moving into the usability lenses, and the Samyang Cine lens is probably the most usable on the small rig. That's just because of the cinema gears that are built onto the lens, so it makes it really easy. I don't need to have an attachable cinema gear onto it or focus follow gear onto it. So the longest focus throw is between the Super Takumar and the Canon Fd. The 7 Artisans and the Samyang lenses are quite short for my liking. I prefer it to be a bit longer. I'd say the price range too. Samyang lenses, the Samyang Cine, it's not a cheap lens, but it's not the most expensive lens. And same with the 7 Artisans. So the more expensive you go, the longer the focus throw is going to be. And also, all the vintage lenses were built well before digital was a thing. They were using them on celluloid. Easy to focus when you've got 1.5 meters, 1.7 meters, 2 meters, 3.5 meters, etc, etc, etc. Neither of these lenses have got stabilization mode, which is unfortunate because the new zoom lenses they've got stabilization mode switches, which is awesome to have some sort of built-in stabilization within the lens. However, these lenses that we've got, they're all built really, really ruggedly. They're built to last. They're really quite heavy. And so I guess if the lens is heavier, then it's easier to stabilize because it just is. I can't explain the physics of it. This isn't the channel for physics, but it is easy to stabilize the lens when it's heavier. This is the 7 Artisans lens, F095. It has about 8 groups with 11 elements. There wasn't much build info on the website, and it has about 12 blades, which makes a full circle bokeh. As you can see, it's full circle. And same as the Samyang, it has a clickless aperture ring, which is pretty sweet. I mean, you don't have to hear the when you flick the aperture around. It's pretty smooth. So this is the Samyang lens. It has got 12 lenses in 10 groups. It's got a modern coating on it, 8 aperture blades designed to make starlight bokeh. It also is built to try and minimize flares, remove chromatic aberrations, etc, etc, all this stuff that you don't like. So the Canon Fd Lens has got 9 elements, 8 groups, has a similar floating element focus system as the Samyang lens. It's got 8 blades in the aperture ring, and it's got a super spectral coating to do better contrast, increased sharpness, less chromatic aberrations, reduce flares, and all the bad stuff that most people don't like.